Hey guys, tonight we wander through the flickering glow of torchlight, past the stench of mud and smoke curling through crooked alleyways, straight into the heart of a medieval village. You're standing on a rickety wooden porch, the boards creaking beneath your boots, while the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoes like a heartbeat. A mangy dog scurries past, with something unidentifiable in its jaws, and you realize this world is as far from your warm living room as it gets. Imagine if a modern parenting expert from today suddenly appeared here, clutching a clipboard, trying to hand out pamphlets about child safety. They'd faint within 5 minutes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward into the street, your breath catching in the smoky chill. The sky overhead is a bruised purple, and lanterns hang crookedly from wooden posts, sputtering as if reluctant to hold back the night. To your left, a small boy no more than 6 hauls a bucket of water that's almost bigger than he is, struggling to balance as it sloshes down his ragged tunic. No one stops to help him. His father, a wiry man with soot-streaked hands, hollers from a doorway, "Move faster, boy, or I'll tan your hide." You flinch at the harshness of it, but no one else blinks. Here, parenting isn't about gentle encouragement or participation trophies. It's survival training in its rawest form. As you walk further, the dirt road gives way to uneven cobblestones, slick with something you'd rather not identify. A group of children scamper past barefoot, their laughter sharp, almost feral, as they chase a rat with sticks. No shoes, no coats. And nobody's telling them to be careful. In this world, scrapes and bruises aren't emergencies, they're proof of life. You pass a mother squatting near her doorway, scrubbing laundry in a basin of murky water. A toddler crawls at her feet, dangerously close to a gutter that reeks of sewage. She glances at the child once, then goes back to her work, unconcerned. This isn't neglect. This is Tuesday. The air is heavy with the smell of firewood, manure, and salted fish. Every corner is alive with movement merchants hawking wares, chickens clucking underfoot, and dogs snapping at discarded scraps. You notice how many children there are, darting around unsupervised, their small bodies blending into the chaos. No one hovers over them with snacks or sunscreen. Instead, these children are miniature adults, expected to pull their weight, expected to survive. A girl of maybe 7 years old kneels near a spinning wheel, her tiny fingers working the fibers with astonishing skill. She glances up at you briefly, suspicion in her eyes, then returns to her task. Childhood here isn't a carefree phase. It's a job. You pause near the village well, its wooden frame weathered and splintered. A woman lowers a bucket into the darkness, her bony hands working quickly. She's no older than you, yet her back is stooped, and her face bears the lines of someone who's weathered storms you can't imagine. A boy stands at her side, clutching a dagger, not a toy, but a real blade, sharp enough to gut a fish or defend the family goat from thieves. He looks at you with quiet, solemn eyes, the kind that have already seen too much. You can almost hear the whispered warning in his stare. Don't pity us. This is just life. You're struck by how quickly the illusion of modern safety unravels here. There are no strollers, no baby monitors, no fences to keep children away from danger. If you trip and fall into the muck, you'll probably be fine. If a child does the same, they'll get up, wipe their face, and keep running. Parenting here is not about bubble wrapping your kids. It's about sharpening them like swords. And yet, despite the harshness, there's a strange resilience in their faces, a strength born from being forged in this rough world. A sudden cry rings out behind you, and you spin around to see a boy about 9 years old climbing onto a cart laden with hay. He slips, falls hard on his back, and the crowd barely reacts. His mother calls out something you can't understand, more annoyed than worried, and he dusts himself off, limping but not crying. Here, pain is a teacher, not a reason to panic. You can't help but feel a strange mix of awe and unease. In this world, kids grow up fast, or they don't grow up at all. As you continue down the lane, the night deepens, and shadows stretch long across the road. A man passes by carrying a bundle of firewood, his child perched precariously on top. No safety straps, no helmets, just strong arms, and a world where danger is a constant companion. You step aside as a horse-drawn cart rumbles past, splattering mud onto your boots. The driver shouts at his children running ahead, and they scatter with the practiced agility of kids who've spent their whole lives dodging hazards. The realization settles in. If modern child protection services somehow existed in this world, they'd have a meltdown within minutes. But here, this isn't abuse. It's necessity. And it's only the first glimpse of the parenting practices that would have today's world calling for handcuffs and investigations. You adjust your cloak, pulling it tighter around you as a cold breeze snakes through the street. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries, its wail thin and tired. No one rushes to hush it. This is survival. And survival doesn't pause for comfort. The wind carries the scent of wood smoke and livestock, and you find yourself stepping deeper into this village, heart pounding with curiosity. There's more to see, more to learn about what it truly meant to raise a child here. You've only scratched the surface, and already this world feels as wild and untamed as the forests beyond its gates. You follow the sound of that crying baby, weaving through a narrow alley where the walls lean inward, like they're conspiring to block out the moonlight. The wailing leads you to a small hut, its thatched roof sagging under the weight of time. Inside, a woman rocks a newborn in her arms. The baby's swaddled, but not in soft pastel blankets. This is coarse wool, itchy and stiff, with a faint smell of smoke clinging to it. The woman hums softly, but she's not singing a lullaby you'd recognize. Her voice is rough, more like a chant meant to ward off evil spirits than soothe her child. Here, parenting is as much about superstition as it is about care. You notice a bundle of herbs tied above the doorway, a charm against sickness and curses. The air in the hut is heavy with the scent of garlic and sage. A clay bowl sits in the corner filled with cloudy water, and a rusty knife rests nearby, ready for anything from cutting meat to performing impromptu medical procedures. Imagine your pediatrician walking in here, clutching a clipboard and fainting at the sight of this setup. No sterile wipes, no bottles of hand sanitizer, just grit and prayer. The woman catches your gaze, her tired eyes softening as she adjusts the baby. She says something you don't understand, a blessing perhaps, and gestures for you to step closer. The baby's face is pale, its tiny fists trembling in the cool air. You crouch down and notice the redness around its mouth raw from nursing. No one has warned her about latching or breast pumps. Those words don't exist here. Parenting advice comes from grandmothers, local gossip, or the village healer who likely believes illnesses are caused by imbalanced humors. As you leave the hut, a chill creeps over you. A group of children huddle nearby, crouching over a crude wooden board scratched with symbols. They're playing a game that involves flicking pebbles, but their focus is deadly serious, like this is training for something more than fun. You're struck by how little laughter there is in their play. Childhood here is serious business. There's no bright playground, no slide polished by endless afternoons of carefree sliding. Here, play often doubles as preparation for adulthood. You continue walking until you reach a small clearing where a family is gathered around a fire pit. The father is sharpening a scythe while his eldest son, maybe 12, holds a chicken by its legs. The bird thrashes as the boy hesitates, knife in hand. The father barks something sharp and impatient, and the boy swallows hard, pressing the blade to the bird's neck. You want to look away, but this is his lesson tonight. This is his rite of passage. No soft introductions, no age-appropriate step-by-step guides. He's learning survival, the medieval way, and you realize he'll likely be doing this without hesitation by the end of the week. The smell of blood mingles with wood smoke, heavy in the cool night air. The younger children watch wide-eyed, silent, absorbing every moment. No one's shielding them from the reality of death. There's no, let's not upset the kids conversation. Death is a part of life, and life is fragile here. You glance up at the stars, wondering how many little ones didn't live to see this kind of lesson. Infant mortality is a shadow that hangs over every home, and every parent knows it. You step closer to the fire pit, and the warmth draws you in despite the grimness of the scene. The mother stirs a pot, its contents bubbling with a mixture of herbs, roots, and mystery meat. She hands a wooden cup to her youngest daughter, who sips it without complaint, even though the smell makes your stomach turn. Kids here don't get picky eater privileges. You either eat what's given or go hungry. As you watch, you start to understand why parenting in this world looks so harsh through modern eyes. There's no room for softness, no cushion between a child and the hard edges of reality. Every scolding, every stern word, every lesson is a layer of armor being hammered onto them. And yet, beneath that hardness, you sense something else: love, fierce and unspoken. The father's harsh commands are meant to prepare his children, not break them. The mother's rough hands, cracked from endless labor, cradle her baby with a tenderness that speaks louder than words. A gust of wind rustles the fire, sending sparks swirling into the air. You pull your cloak tighter and step back onto the main road, your boots squelching in the mud. The village is quieter now, but the lessons linger. Here, parenting is an act of defiance against a world that doesn't care if your child survives. And as you move deeper into this medieval night, you realize this is only the beginning of the stories these cobblestone streets have to tell. You follow a narrow path leading away from the village square, your boots crunching over frost-hardened dirt. The air is colder here, sharper, carrying the smell of smoke and manure from nearby barns. A lantern swings in your hand, its glow flickering over the jagged silhouettes of huts. Somewhere ahead, a baby's cry cuts through the night like a blade, thin and desperate. You quicken your pace, curiosity pulling you closer, and stumble upon a small cottage half buried in shadows. Inside, you see a young mother crouched near a wooden cradle, rocking it with one foot, while her hands knead bread dough on a low table. Her movements are mechanical, almost trance-like, as she hums a tune with no melody. The baby's cries soften to whimpers, but she doesn't pause her work. In this world, parenting doesn't mean stopping everything to soothe a child. Survival doesn't wait for tears to dry. Imagine a modern parenting influencer trying to live stream advice here. They drop their ring light and run out screaming. The cradle itself is little more than a wooden box with straw lining. No soft mattress, no plush animals, no lullaby mobiles spinning overhead. The baby swaddles so tightly in a wool blanket that it looks like a loaf of bread, its tiny face peeking out with flushed cheeks. Beside the cradle is a clay bowl filled with goat's milk, a wooden spoon sticking out of it. There's no bottle or sterilization. This is parenting stripped bare. The mother glances at you briefly, her face pale and tired, then gestures toward the fire. You crouch beside it, warming your hands as your eyes wander over the room. Herbs hang drying from the rafters, their scent mingling with the faint tang of smoke. A crude wooden spoon rests on the table next to a knife, so dull it's practically a blunt stick. Everything here feels improvised, patched together by sheer determination. Parenting in this time isn't about having the best tools, it's about making something out of nothing. You step back outside, the cold night air hitting your face like a slap. Across the lane, you see a group of children gathered around a man who's crouched low, holding a leather strap. His face is hard, but his voice is calm as he ties the strap into a knot, demonstrating its strength. The children, ranging from 5 to 10 years old, watch with solemn attention. This isn't a lesson in crafting or play, this is preparation. They'll learn how to tie up animals, secure carts, maybe even restrain thieves. Childhood isn't a bubble here, it's a boot camp. One boy, no older than 7, takes the strap in his hands and fumbles with it. The man, his father, you assume, snaps something sharp and corrective. The boy flinches but tries again, determination stiffening his shoulders. You can almost see him age in real time, his face set with the weight of expectations that would crush a modern kid. There are no participation trophies waiting for him. The only reward is survival. You leave them to their lesson and wander toward the edge of the village, where the homes thin out and fields stretch into darkness. Here, a small group of girls kneel in the dirt, each holding a bundle of firewood tied with twine. Their arms tremble under the weight, but no one offers to help. A stern woman, probably their mother, gestures toward a pile of wood stacked higher than their heads. Her words are curt, commanding. The girls nod silently, determination etched into their faces. You realize that in this world, children aren't just part of the family, they're part of the workforce. The concept of childhood as a time of carefree play doesn't exist here. If you're old enough to walk, you're old enough to carry something. If you're old enough to understand words, you're old enough to follow orders. Parents aren't raising kids, they're raising survivors. The wind carries a new sound low, mournful bells from the village chapel. You follow the sound and find yourself standing before a tiny wooden church, its door cracked open. Inside, candles flicker weakly, casting dancing shadows over worn wooden pews. A man in tattered robes kneels at the altar, whispering a prayer. In the back corner, a cradle sits unattended, the baby within it sleeping soundly despite the cold. You step closer, puzzled, until a woman emerges from the shadows. She smiles faintly and explains in broken whispers that she left her baby there because she couldn't feed him. The church is his best chance at survival. You freeze, the weight of her words sinking like a stone in your chest. Parenting here sometimes means letting go, even when your heart breaks. There's no foster care system, no hotline to call, just hope and faith that strangers will be kinder than fate. You step back into the night, your breath clouding in the cold air. The stars overhead glitter like ice, but they offer no warmth. You realize that every parent here walks a tightrope, balancing love with necessity, fear with determination. And with each step deeper into this world, you're starting to see why their version of parenting would be unthinkable today, but also why it worked. You pull your cloak tighter as you walk farther from the chapel, its lonely bell still echoing in the distance. The road ahead narrows into a muddy path, lined with crooked fences, some missing planks, others barely standing. A sharp gust of wind carries the smell of smoke and wet hay, and somewhere in the darkness, a dog barks furiously. Ahead, you see a flicker of torchlight near a small cluster of huts. You approach cautiously, boots squelching with every step, until you're close enough to see what's happening. A group of parents stands in a rough circle around a small boy, maybe 5 years old, who clutches a bundle of sticks against his chest. His face is red from crying, his cheeks streaked with mud, but no one rushes in to comfort him. Instead, his father gestures sternly toward the bundle. The boy, still sobbing, lifts it higher and takes a wobbly step forward. The torchlight flickers over the father's face, hard and unyielding. You realize this isn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. This is training. The boy is learning to carry wood because one day he'll have to do it without anyone there to watch. You step back, your heart aching, but something inside you knows this is their version of love. Love here is tough and practical. It doesn't coddle, it prepares. The boy stumbles again but keeps going, determination in his tiny shoulders. His mother watches from the sidelines, arms folded, her face unreadable. In this place, comfort comes later, if at all. A few huts down, you find a small fire where another family sits huddled together. A man crouches over a wooden board, carving a toy, a rough little horse from a block of wood. His daughter, barely 4, watches with wide eyes, her tiny fingers tracing the shape of the horse's head. He hands it to her, and her face lights up for a brief moment before she sets it aside to help her mother sort through a pile of turnips. The moment of play is fleeting, almost foreign here. Childhood joy exists, but it's fleeting, a stolen moment between endless chores. As you watch, a young boy emerges from the shadows, carrying a heavy bucket of water. He's no older than 8, but his hands are calloused, his arms straining as he drags it to the fire. He doesn't complain. Nobody cheers him on. He simply does what's expected of him. The reality hits you. Kids here are not being raised to thrive in the modern sense. They're being raised to survive. That bucket might mean the difference between life and death if the fire goes out in the dead of winter. You wander past the family and follow a path leading behind the huts, where a faint glow spills from a window. Peering inside, you see a mother crouched over her daughter's hair, combing through it with a fine-toothed bone comb. The girl winces as the comb tugs at her scalp, and you realize she's not just brushing, she's checking for lice. A small clay bowl filled with oil and dead lice sits on the table beside them. The girl bites her lip to keep from crying out, while her mother hums softly, her expression calm and steady. Hygiene is a battle here, one fought daily and often lost. Imagine trying to explain modern shampoo commercials to this family. They'd laugh, maybe cry, at the absurd luxury of hydrating conditioners and detangling sprays. Here, hair care is survival, not self-care. And this mother, with her weathered hands and tired eyes, is showing love in the only way she can, through vigilance. Stepping away from the window, you hear shouting from a nearby barn. Curiosity draws you closer, and you peek inside to see a teenage boy struggling to lift a sack of grain. His father stands over him, barking instructions while holding a switch. The boy's arms shake, his face red with exertion, but he doesn't stop. This is his training. This is his preparation for adulthood, and there's no gentle on-ramp. By the time he's grown, he'll be stronger than most adults today, but at a cost that makes your stomach twist. The barn smells of hay, sweat, and livestock. A few younger children crouch in a corner, playing with kittens that wander near the hay bales. Even here, amid the harsh lessons, there's softness, a stolen moment of laughter as the kittens bat at loose strings. You notice the father glance over at them and smirk briefly before returning to his son's training. Love exists here, but it hides behind stern faces and heavy expectations. As you leave the barn, the cold night wraps around you again like a cloak. The path ahead slopes downward, leading toward a river. Moonlight glimmers on its surface, and you see a woman kneeling at the edge, scrubbing clothes against a rock. Beside her, her toddler sits barefoot in the mud, splashing happily in the icy water. No one rushes to dry him off or wrap him in a towel. This is normal. The child laughs as his hands turn red from the cold, and his mother only glances up once before continuing her work. Here, resilience is taught before you can even walk. You crouch by the riverbank, dipping your fingers into the freezing water. It bites your skin like ice. You can't imagine letting a toddler sit in this chill, but this is how children grow strong here, not through pampering but exposure. The thought unsettles you, but part of you understands. Behind you, the village glows faintly with torchlight, a pocket of warmth in a brutal world. You're starting to see a pattern emerge. Medieval parenting isn't about kindness in the way we define it today. It's about preparing children for a life that is short, dangerous, and unforgiving. And yet, within that harshness, there are glimmers of care, of love, expressed not through comfort, but through survival. You stand and take one last look at the river, before turning back toward the village, where the night feels heavier now, like it's pressing down on your shoulders. You're not done here. There's more to see, more to learn. You trudge back toward the village, your lantern swinging low as the wind tugs at your cloak. The torchlight flickering in the distance feels like a beacon, guiding you through the dark maze of huts and muddy paths. As you round a corner, you nearly collide with a boy carrying a stack of firewood so high it towers over his head. He's maybe 10 years old, but his face is hard, serious, and older than his years. He mutters an apology without looking up and stumbles off toward a hut, his small frame disappearing into the shadows. You watch him go, your heart heavy, then catch sight of a small group of children crouched together beneath an awning. They're whispering, passing around something small and shiny. You step closer and realize it's a small knife, nothing more than a sharpened shard of metal tied to a wooden handle. A boy demonstrates how to hold it properly, his hands steady, his voice calm. The others watch intently, their wide eyes glinting in the lantern light. These aren't toys, these are lessons. In this world, kids don't wait until adulthood to learn how to defend themselves. They start now, before they even know what fear truly is. Further down the road, you hear the rhythmic thud of a hammer striking wood. You follow the sound to a low hut where a man is mending a broken cartwheel by firelight. A little girl, no older than 5, kneels beside him, holding nails in her tiny fist. Her face is serious, her posture straight. She hands him a nail without being asked, then another, her small hands stained with soot. She's learning through observation, absorbing every movement, every word. Childhood here is a masterclass in survival skills, not ABCs and bedtime stories. You step away from the workshop and make your way to the village edge, where the road widens into a small square. In the center, a large wooden post stands tall, its surface scarred and stained from years of use. Tonight, it serves a grim purpose. A teenage boy kneels before it, his face pale, his hands clasped tightly together. His mother stands behind him, her expression grim but calm, as an older man lectures him in a booming voice. It's a punishment for disobedience. And the entire village seems to have gathered to watch. No one shields the boy from shame. No one tells him it's okay. Here, discipline is a public affair, a spectacle meant to teach every child who watches. You can almost feel the weight of their fear as the boy is made to kneel longer, his head bowed in shame. Parents nod approvingly at the lesson being taught, and even the boy's mother stands tall, her lips pressed in a firm line. She doesn't intervene because this is how her son learns. The message is clear. In this world, punishment is not abuse, it's a tool. You glance around and see little ones clinging to their parents' skirts, wide-eyed as they watch. This moment will stay with them, shaping their understanding of rules and consequences. And it strikes you, medieval parenting didn't just raise children, it forged them into adults as quickly as possible, no matter how harsh the process looked. The crowd eventually disperses, and the boy is allowed to stand. His knees tremble, but he walks away with his mother, silent and stoic. You catch her glance toward him, her hand briefly resting on his shoulder, and for a fleeting moment, tenderness flickers between them. Love, in this time, isn't expressed with soft words and hugs. It's a quiet, restrained thing, buried beneath layers of necessity. You continue wandering until you find yourself near a large, open barn. Inside, lanterns cast long, golden beams over a group of children clustered around a low wooden table. A man with a heavy beard and stern eyes stands over them, a stick in his hand, not for striking, but for pointing. He's teaching them letters, carefully scratching shapes into the dirt with the stick, while the children repeat them. You notice that several of the kids are barefoot, their toes curled against the cold dirt floor, yet they sit as still as statues, hanging on his every word. Education here is rare and precious, often taught by parents themselves rather than schools. The man pauses, handing the stick to a boy who can't be older than 6. The boy draws a shaky letter in the dirt, his face glowing with pride. For a moment, the harshness of this world softens. Even here, in the midst of poverty and danger, parents strive to pass down knowledge. You realize that medieval parenting isn't all punishment and survival lessons, it's also sacrifice. Parents here give what little they have, even if it's just time, to prepare their children for a brutal world. You step outside, the night colder now, and glance back toward the barn where the glow of lantern light spills into the darkness. It feels like a fragile pocket of hope in a sea of hardship. Yet as you walk away, the sound of a baby crying somewhere in the distance reminds you that hope is fragile here. Ahead, you see a small cottage with a light still burning in its window. You approach cautiously and peek inside. A mother sits on a stool, rocking her baby in her arms, while her other children sleep on a straw mat nearby, huddled together like puppies for warmth. She hums softly, her voice rough but gentle, and for a brief moment, the scene feels almost timeless. Parenting in this world may be harsh, but this moment of tenderness proves something important. Love has always been here, even in the hardest of times. You slip away from the cottage, the soft hum of that lullaby lingering in your ears as you make your way back into the chill night. The stars above are sharp and bright, like tiny shards of ice scattered across a black sky. The village feels quieter now, but not peaceful. There's always an undercurrent of tension here, like the whole world is bracing for the next storm, the next sickness, the next tragedy. And in that constant uncertainty, parents raise their children not to be soft, but to be ready. As you walk, you pass a small field fenced in with rough wooden posts. In the dim moonlight, you see a boy of about 9 hunched over, herding a few stubborn goats with a stick nearly as tall as he is. He's barefoot, and the frost-covered grass crunches under his feet, but he doesn't seem to mind, or perhaps he's learned not to complain. A man, likely his father, stands nearby, arms crossed, silently watching. The boy stumbles, and one of the goats darts toward the fence. The man barks a sharp command, and the boy scrambles to get it back in line. You stay hidden in the shadows, watching this lesson play out. The boy doesn't cry. He doesn't plead for help. He grips the stick tighter, his little shoulders squared, and manages to wrangle the goat back. His father nods once, expression unreadable. No praise, no pat on the back. But that nod means everything. In this world, a nod from your father is worth more than a dozen "I'm proud of you" speeches today. A cold wind cuts through the field, and you turn toward a cluster of homes nearby. One hut has a faint glow in the window, so you step closer and peek inside. A mother kneels beside a wooden tub filled with water, so murky it looks like tea. She scrubs her daughter's feet with a rag, her movements brisk but not unkind. The girl bites her lip, trying not to cry as her mother scrapes away layers of dirt. Beside them, a small boy sleeps on a pile of rags, his thumb in his mouth. The scene is simple, but it hits you hard. Love here is not shown through softness, but through care that is practical and relentless. That water may not be warm or clean, but this mother is fighting to keep her daughter healthy in a world where disease waits around every corner. You back away from the window and continue down the dirt path, the sound of distant livestock echoing in the night. Eventually, you find yourself drawn to another glow, a workshop at the far end of the village. Inside, a man sits at a wooden table, carefully repairing a pair of worn shoes. His son, maybe 11, kneels beside him, sewing another pair with clumsy but determined hands. You watch as the man corrects his son's technique, not with a scolding, but with a guiding hand. For a moment, the air in the workshop feels warm, not because of the fire crackling in the hearth, but because of the quiet bond between father and son. It dawns on you that medieval parenting is a paradox, harsh on the surface, but deeply invested beneath it all. Parents here are strict, often brutal by modern standards, because every mistake could be fatal. Yet their lives revolve around preparing their children to survive. That's their form of love. You leave the workshop and make your way back to the main road, where a group of teenagers is gathered near a small fire. They're sharpening knives, laughing quietly among themselves. One of them is polishing a bow, his fingers working with speed and confidence. A younger boy sits nearby, trying to imitate him, his knife slipping dangerously close to his thumb. A woman appears suddenly, swats his hand away, and scolds him in a low voice. She doesn't sound angry. She sounds terrified. That knife could easily end him. This is her way of saying, "I love you. Be careful." The boy sulks but listens. The older kids don't tease him. They simply return to their tasks. You notice how calm they are around weapons, like this is just part of life. And it is. Imagine handing a sharpened knife to a 10-year-old today and calling it training. Here, it's normal, necessary. You watch for a while, mesmerized by how naturally they all move, before slipping away toward another flicker of light at the village edge. The building you find is larger than most huts, with smoke rising steadily from a crooked chimney. Inside, you see a woman hunched over a spinning wheel, her foot pumping steadily as her hands weave thread with practiced skill. 2 children sit at her feet, untangling clumps of wool and winding them into balls. Neither of them looks bored or restless. This is their job. You realize that in this world, there is no separation between adult work and kid chores. Everyone contributes. Childhood is a role, not a phase. The woman pauses her spinning, glancing up at her children. She says something you can't hear, and they immediately smile and nod. Even here, in this dim little room filled with wool dust and shadows, there's warmth. Parents may not have the luxury of soft words and endless praise, but their love shows in the way they keep their children close, teaching them everything they know. You step back into the night, your breath coming out in soft clouds. The moon is high now, silver light spilling over the rooftops. The village feels like a living thing, breathing, working, enduring. And everywhere you look, parents are shaping their children not with comfort, but with lessons forged in hardship. As you stand there, the pieces begin to come together. Medieval parenting would get you arrested today, but here, it's the only way to keep a child alive. This is a world where love is armor, and every hug is replaced with a skill that might one day save their life. You wander deeper into the village, past the glow of torches and the low murmur of voices, until you reach a row of small animal pens. The smell of hay and manure is overwhelming, but there's movement in the shadows that draws your attention. A boy no older than 8 is crouched beside a pig pen, holding a wooden bucket filled with scraps. He tips it carefully over the edge, and the pigs squeal, shoving their snouts through the slats. He doesn't flinch when one nips at his hand. He simply pulls back and continues. Expression calm, movements practiced. His father leans on a fence post nearby, watching with a stern eye. You can tell this is a test. Every child here has them, small moments where parents stand back and see if their lessons stick. The boy finishes feeding the pigs, latches the gate, and wipes his hands on his tunic. The father grunts approval, not a smile, not a pat on the back, but a sound that carries weight. The boy beams quietly, proud of himself, and trots back toward their hut. That grunt was enough. You turn to leave, but your attention catches on a soft, rhythmic squeaking sound. Around the corner, a teenage girl is kneeling on the ground, rocking a cradle with her foot while shelling peas into a basket. She's barely older than a child herself, yet she's already tending to a sibling with the steady care of a seasoned parent. In this world, big sisters and brothers aren't just siblings, they're second parents. She hums softly as she works, her hands moving quickly, her gaze darting between the baby and the peas. No one is telling her she's too young for this responsibility. Here, childhood ends the moment you're strong enough to carry another child in your arms. The night air grows colder as you continue down the path, your lantern casting long shadows over the uneven cobblestones. Ahead, the faint clanging of metal draws your attention. You follow the sound and find a blacksmith's forge glowing like a beacon in the darkness. Inside, the blacksmith is bent over an anvil, hammering a glowing horseshoe, sweat dripping down his face. But what catches your eye is the small boy standing beside him, gripping a set of tongs nearly as tall as he is. The boy's arms shake as he holds the tongs steady, but his father doesn't reach out to help him. He barks instructions instead, his voice sharp over the hiss of molten metal. The boy grits his teeth, adjusts his grip, and manages to hold steady long enough for his father to strike again. Sparks fly, illuminating the boy's face, which is set with intense concentration. The scene is mesmerizing. A child learning to shape metal while most modern kids his age are barely learning to ride a bike. You step back into the street, the echo of hammer strikes fading behind you. Across the way, a narrow alley leads to a small stone structure. The smell hits you before you see it sharp and bitter. A woman stands outside with 2 small children at her side. She's stirring a pot filled with herbs over a tiny fire, and the children are watching her closely, mimicking her every move. This isn't just cooking, this is medicine making. She's teaching them which herbs heal wounds, which help with fever, and which can kill if you're not careful. There are no pharmacies here, no doctor's offices to visit if something goes wrong. Knowledge is survival, and it's passed down like treasure. The children are quiet, their small faces lit by the flickering flames. You can see the seriousness in their eyes, the understanding that what they're learning is vital. Imagine a modern parent handing their 7-year-old a handful of deadly herbs and saying, "Learn this, or you might die one day." It sounds horrifying, but here it's simply necessary. You leave the alley and head back toward the village center, where a small group of parents gathers around a fire. They're laughing softly, sharing a rare moment of rest. Their children sit close by, huddled together for warmth, but they're not being coddled. The littlest one leans against her father's leg, sucking her thumb, while he sharpens a knife without pause. Tenderness and danger coexist here, like two sides of the same coin. As you watch, a mother reaches into the fire with a long stick, pulling out a glowing ember. She blows on it, then uses it to light a clay oil lamp. Her young son watches closely, wide-eyed. Without hesitation, she hands him the lamp. He grips it carefully, trembling as the flame dances dangerously close to his face. She doesn't snatch it back or warn him. She lets him feel the weight of it, the responsibility, teaching him through trust rather than fear. He places it carefully on a nearby rock, and she nods once. He's passed another quiet test. The night deepens, and the village feels even more alive now, though the streets are empty. Behind every door, families are working, teaching, disciplining, and surviving. You realize that parenting here is a constant act of preparation. Every chore, every sharp word, every lesson carries the same message. You must be ready. As you stand there in the torchlight, your mind drifts back to your own world, one filled with child-proof locks, padded playgrounds, and safety regulations. Here, danger is everywhere, and parents don't try to remove it. They teach their children to live with it. And strangely, there's something powerful in that. You take a step forward, drawn by the sound of distant laughter. Somewhere nearby, children are playing. But you know already that even play here carries lessons you haven't yet seen. You follow the sound of laughter until you reach a small clearing lit by the pale glow of the moon. A group of children is gathered there, but they're not playing tag or hopscotch. They're wrestling in the dirt. The older ones tackle the younger ones gently, teaching them how to twist out of a hold or duck a blow. One boy, barely 10, shows his little brother how to keep his balance while being shoved. The smaller boy topples over anyway, landing flat on his back with a puff of dust. He laughs, gets up, and immediately tries again. Their parents stand nearby, arms crossed, watching with approval. There's no rushing in to console the boy, no hugs or reassurances. Falling is part of the lesson. You notice one father correcting his daughter's stance, adjusting her elbows, teaching her to strike harder. She nods seriously, eyes narrowing in concentration before she shoves her opponent again. There's a strange beauty to the scene. It's rough, but it's also full of love. These parents are raising warriors because anything less would mean death in this world. You wander a little closer, the crunch of your boots drawing their attention for a moment. The children pause to glance at you. Their expressions a mix of curiosity and pride, before diving right back into their rough-and-tumble training. The parents barely acknowledge you. Their eyes are locked on their kids, scanning for mistakes, calculating risks. These are parents who can't afford to shelter their children too much, because they know the world won't. A sudden sound cuts through the night, a loud, sharp whistle. All the kids freeze. You spin around and see a man standing at the edge of the clearing, holding a wooden stick carved like a shepherd's crook. He barks an order in a language you don't fully understand, and the children scramble into a neat line. It's time for a game of strategy, though you can already tell this game is meant to teach something. The man tosses a wooden hoop onto the ground and sets the stick in the center of the circle. He explains quickly, pointing and gesturing, and then claps his hands. One of the older boys dashes forward, trying to grab the stick before the others catch him. What follows looks like chaos. Children chasing, tackling, and shouting, but you realize this is training in disguise. They're learning teamwork, reflexes, and cunning, all under the guise of play. You smile, imagining modern parents watching this scene and fainting at the first shove. As the game continues, you notice that none of the kids are crying, even when they fall hard or get shoved to the ground. They're too focused, too determined. Parents here don't rush to comfort. They let their children feel pain so they can learn to endure it. It feels harsh, but the children's laughter tells a different story. They're not scared. They're thriving. You take a step back, blending into the shadows, and let your eyes wander over the rest of the clearing. On the far side, a little girl, no older than 6, is practicing with a slingshot, aiming at a wooden target nailed to a tree. Her father crouches beside her, adjusting her stance, murmuring quiet encouragement. The girl squints one eye, pulls back the strap, and releases. The stone flies wide of the target, but instead of scolding her, her father grins and ruffles her hair. She resets and tries again, her tiny face full of determination. There's something humbling about this moment. These children live in a world where they might need to hunt for food or defend themselves before they're even 10. The thought makes you shiver not just from the cold breeze, but from the realization of how fragile life was here and how seriously parents took their duty to prepare their young. You decide to leave them to their training and wander back down the moonlit path. The sound of laughter and shouts fades behind you, replaced by the soft crackle of torches and the rustle of leaves overhead. The village seems quieter now, though you know behind every door and window there are children being shaped into survivors. Up ahead, you spot an older woman standing by a doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. She's watching a boy, maybe 12, trying to carry a heavy bucket of water. His arms tremble as he struggles, his feet slipping slightly in the mud, but she doesn't move to help him. Her face is stern, but not unkind, and you realize this is another lesson. Strength through struggle. The boy finally makes it to the doorway, setting the bucket down with a loud sigh of relief. The woman gives him a small nod before leading him inside. You keep walking, passing more families and flickering windows, each revealing its own story of discipline, resilience, and love that looks far different from what you're used to. There's no baby monitor, no safety gates, no soft plush toys. Here, childhood is brief, and parenting is a constant act of preparing for the worst. And yet, there's a certain warmth in it, a closeness born from shared struggle. You're beginning to see how love here is not spoken so much as it's shown through trust, through responsibility, through a willingness to let children stumble so they can rise again. The path ahead narrows, leading toward the edge of the village, where a lone torch flickers near a small wooden shed. Something about the scene draws you closer, as if there's another lesson to uncover. You step off the beaten path and approach the shed, its door slightly ajar, creaking with every gust of wind. Inside, a dim lantern reveals a boy kneeling beside a pile of straw. He's carefully shaping something with his hands, a rough wooden spoon, its surface jagged but recognizable. Beside him, his father looms, arms folded, watching silently. There are no encouraging words, no soft praises. Instead, the man occasionally grunts or points, and the boy obediently reshapes the spoon, his small fingers trembling from effort and the chill in the air. You crouch low to watch. The boy looks so young, perhaps 8 or 9, yet he's already being taught a trade, his shoulders hunched in focus like a seasoned craftsman. The father's presence is stern but not cruel. It's a quiet demand for excellence. Every slip of the knife is corrected immediately, not with anger, but with a quick demonstration. The boy imitates his father's movements, his brow furrowed, determination etched into his face. This is no weekend hobby. This is survival training. By the time this boy is 10, he'll be expected to contribute to the family's livelihood, perhaps even craft spoons to sell at the market. There's no allowance here, no free time filled with cartoons or video games, only the understanding that every member of the family must pull their weight. Imagine walking into this scene today and seeing a child with a sharp knife, carving by lantern light under the unblinking eye of a parent. It would set off alarm bells, maybe even a few frantic phone calls to authorities. The boy pauses, flexing his sore fingers. His father steps closer, lifts the spoon, and examines it critically. After a long silence, he gives a short nod of approval. The boy beams, a small flicker of pride lighting up his tired face. The father pats his shoulder once, then gestures for him to clean up. It's a simple moment, but it speaks volumes. Praise here is rare and earned through grit. You step back out of the shed, the cold night air filling your lungs as you continue deeper into the village's edge. The houses grow smaller and shabbier here, and the faint bleating of goats reaches your ears. Ahead, a young girl, no more than 7, hauls a bundle of firewood nearly her own size toward a hut. She stumbles, her thin arms trembling under the weight, but no one rushes to help. From the doorway, an older woman, her grandmother, perhaps watches silently, her expression unreadable. The girl sets the bundle down with a grunt, dusts off her dress, and walks back toward the forest to fetch more. You realize this is parenting too. It's not neglect, it's expectation. Children are trusted to do hard things, and in return, they learn responsibility earlier than most modern adults. You find yourself imagining a modern suburban parent fainting at the sight, clutching their pearls over child labor, while here, it's simply life. As you wander past the hut, the smell of smoke and stew wafts through the air, comforting and warm despite the starkness of everything else. There's a rhythm to this world. Work, struggle, family. Love is not about comfort here. It's about preparing children to survive without their parents someday. Because everyone knows that day could come too soon. The path turns again, leading you toward a fenced-off area. You hear clucking and soft bleats, and when you peer over the fence, you see a boy crouched low, cradling a chicken. He's not playing with it, though. He's preparing it for dinner. His father kneels beside him, guiding his hands carefully. The boy's eyes are wide, his face pale in the flickering torchlight, but he nods and swallows hard. This is another lesson, one that would horrify modern sensibilities. The boy is being taught to provide for his family, to face the realities of life and death. You look away for a moment, giving them privacy, though the quiet cluck of the bird and the boy's slow breathing tell you this is a rite of passage for him. His father's voice is low and steady, filled with patience. There's no rush, no shouting, just guidance. You step back, giving them space, and continue down the trail. The village feels alive around you, buzzing with the quiet intensity of families preparing their children for survival, for adulthood, for a life that offers no safety nets. It's harsh, but deeply human, and it leaves you feeling both uneasy and strangely inspired. In the distance, you see a larger building, a longhouse, perhaps glowing warmly from within. Laughter and voices spill out, inviting you closer. You realize this might be the heart of the community, a place where families gather after long days of labor. Maybe here you'll see a different side of parenting, one that balances all this harshness with moments of tenderness. You push open the heavy wooden door and step inside the longhouse, greeted by warmth that immediately melts the chill from your bones. A roaring fire crackles in the center, its glow flickering against the low, smoke-darkened rafters. Families cluster along wooden benches, their faces flushed from the heat, bowls of steaming stew in their hands. The air is thick with the scent of herbs, meat, and freshly baked bread. Children scamper between the benches, their bare feet slapping the worn floorboards as their parents look on with a mix of exhaustion and quiet amusement. You slip between the benches and watch as a mother feeds a toddler from a wooden spoon. She's gentle, but her movements are brisk, efficient. There's no baby talk, no exaggerated cooing. This little one is expected to eat quickly, to sit still, and to behave. The mother balances the baby on one knee while her other hand weaves flax fibers into thread, her fingers moving with expert precision. Parenting here isn't a single task. It's a skill practiced alongside 10 others. Across the fire, an older man leans back, pipe smoke curling around his weathered face, as he tells a story to a small group of children. They sit cross-legged at his feet, their eyes wide, listening intently. His voice rises and falls dramatically, punctuated by bursts of laughter or gasps. This is their television, their bedtime cartoon. You can almost feel the weight of tradition in every word, stories passed down like heirlooms, shaping the children's understanding of their world. But even here, in this rare space of warmth and laughter, you see how different this parenting style is from what you're used to. There are no constant reminders to use your inside voice or be careful. Children run near the fire, climb onto benches, and wrestle in the straw without an adult rushing to stop them. They're given space to fall, to scrape their knees, to learn their limits through trial and error. You imagine a modern parent whipping out a first aid kit at every tumble, calling for ice packs and disinfectant, while these medieval parents just chuckle and tell their children to get back up. A group of boys near the corner are playing a game with carved wooden sticks and pebbles, their laughter echoing loudly. One boy suddenly yelps as another swings too hard, and the pebble hits him squarely on the hand. He cries out, clutching his fingers, but his father doesn't leap to his rescue. Instead, he nods toward the boy's mother, who calmly inspects the injury, gives him a firm pat on the back, and sends him right back into the game. No one tells the boys to stop. The expectation is clear. Getting hurt is part of learning. Nearby, a woman kneels on the floor, swaddling her infant in thick linen, wrapping him tightly like a tiny loaf of bread. She tucks him into a wooden cradle, where the baby lies completely still, bound snugly from head to toe. The woman rocks the cradle with her foot while she eats. You stare for a moment, fascinated. This swaddling isn't just a bedtime trick. It's believed to shape the baby's limbs and keep him safe. To modernize, it might seem restrictive, even alarming. But here, it's an act of love and protection, passed down for generations. You settle onto a bench near the fire, soaking in the warmth and the scene around you. Parenting here is a communal act. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and even older siblings all pitch in, their roles woven seamlessly into the rhythm of daily life. No one person bears the full burden. Instead, a child grows up surrounded by a network of caregivers, each shaping them in different ways. A young girl, no older than 6, wanders past carrying a jug of water that sloshes dangerously close to the brim. She stumbles slightly, but no one moves to help. Her small brow furrows in concentration as she sets the jug down carefully on a nearby table. When she succeeds without spilling a drop, her father gives her a proud nod. That's it. No over-the-top praise, just acknowledgement. The girl's face glows with accomplishment, and she hurries off again, her small braids swinging behind her. You realize that this world doesn't shield children from life. It invites them into it. They are apprentices in the art of survival, not sheltered observers. There are fewer words of comfort here, fewer reminders that everything will be okay, but there's also an unspoken respect for children's abilities. They are trusted to do hard things, and in return, they grow into capable adults. The fire pops loudly, startling a few little ones, and you smile as they scramble closer to their parents, nestling into warm laps and blankets. For a moment, you see something universal, a softness that transcends time. A mother kisses her child's forehead, a father ruffles his son's hair. Even in this harsh world, love is everywhere. It just looks different, quieter, more practical. As the longhouse settles into a peaceful hum of crackling fire and soft conversation, you stand and slip back outside. The air is cool, crisp, and filled with stars. You take a deep breath, ready to wander further into this village, and uncover even more truths about parenting in a time when survival came first, and comfort was a rare luxury. You walk down a narrow dirt path, boots crunching softly on the frosty ground as you leave the warmth of the longhouse behind. The village is quieter now, most families huddled indoors, but you catch the faint glow of torchlight ahead. Curious, you follow it, drawn to the sound of faint murmurs and soft weeping. The path leads you to a modest cottage, its thatched roof dusted with frost, smoke curling from its chimney. Inside, a woman rocks in a chair, cradling a baby swaddled tightly in linen. Through the small, unshuttered window, you watch her work with the precision of someone who's done this 1,000 times. She dips a cloth into a wooden bowl of warm water and gently wipes her baby's face. But this isn't the careful, sterilized scene you'd expect today. The water is far from clean, and the cloth looks worn thin. There's no shelf of creams and ointments, no stack of disposable diapers in sight. Instead, strips of linen hang from a peg on the wall, ready to be used and washed again. A sudden cough rattles from the woman's chest, and she pulls her shawl tighter as she rocks the baby. She doesn't call a doctor. She doesn't even seem concerned. Illness is a constant companion here, Everyone lives side by side with it. Babies don't get checkups or vaccines, and most families can't even imagine the idea of preventative medicine. If the baby falls ill, they'll try a few herbs, say a prayer, and hope for the best. The thought sends a chill through you. Modern parenting books would have a field day with this scene. The cottage door creaks open, and a boy of about 7 slips inside, his cheeks flushed from the cold. He's carrying an armful of firewood, small logs almost too heavy for his little arms. He stumbles, dropping a piece, but instead of scolding or rushing to help him, the woman just watches silently. The boy grits his teeth, bends down, and picks up the log again. You notice the faint smile she gives him, one of pride. Here, children are raised on resilience. You step closer to the window, peering in as the boy drops the wood near the hearth. He's not finished, though. He grabs a broom and begins sweeping the dirt floor. His movements are slow but steady, and no one tells him to hurry. This is his life, his training. Children aren't seen as fragile beings who need constant supervision. They are contributors, expected to pull their weight from the moment they're able to walk. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the wooden shutters. You pull your cloak tighter and step back, giving the family their privacy. As you continue down the path, you pass a pen where goats shuffle and bleat softly. A young girl, no older than 8, is sitting on a stool milking one of them. Her face is serious as she works, the wooden bucket filling slowly with frothy milk. No one hovers nearby to guide her hands. She's learned this through repetition and observation, not instructions or charts. You pause and imagine a modern parent letting their child milk goats alone in the dark. The thought makes you smile. This world is a sharp contrast to the one you know, but the results speak for themselves. These children are self-sufficient and confident in ways that most modern adults might envy. A dog trots past you, its fur shaggy and thick, clearly more a working animal than a pampered pet. It pauses to sniff your cloak, then darts off toward a cluster of houses further down the path. You follow, drawn by the smell of baking bread wafting through the air. A few women are gathered outside a small hut, their breath puffing in the cold air as they pull loaves from a clay oven. One woman's toddler waddles dangerously close to the fire pit, and you brace for a shout. But none comes. The toddler's mother keeps kneading dough, glancing up only briefly to ensure her child isn't in immediate danger. The little one stumbles, catches himself, and toddles back to safety without intervention. You realize something striking. These parents trust their children deeply. They allow them to learn their own boundaries, to test their own limits. It's a stark contrast to the constant, "Don't touch that," or "Be careful," warnings you're used to hearing in parks and playgrounds today. This trust builds confidence, but it also comes with risk. And in this world, risk is ever present. A sharp bell rings in the distance, startling you. The sound carries through the village, and doors begin to open. Children emerge, rubbing sleep from their eyes, while adults gather bundles of tools and baskets. The day is about to begin in earnest. And parenting here is about to look even more different than you could have imagined. The bell echoes through the crisp morning air, and you find yourself swept along as villagers emerge from their homes. The children don't cling to their mothers or cry at the noise. Instead, they spring into action with the discipline of tiny soldiers. A boy of no more than 5 trots past you, with a small wooden pail, heading straight for the well at the center of the square. He heaves on the rope with all his strength, his small hands gripping the wet wood, and no one offers to help him. You watch him haul up a sloshing bucket that's nearly half his size, his little face red from exertion. This is his morning chore, and it's expected no sticker charts, no gold stars, just duty. Nearby, a group of older children scurry toward the edge of the village, with baskets slung over their backs. They're not off to play, they're foraging for herbs and firewood. In the modern world, a parent might walk their child to school with a backpack full of snacks, water bottles, and an iPad for later. Here, children walk themselves to the woods, accompanied by a sharp stick and a woven satchel. No one's fretting about stranger danger or scraped knees. You follow the group at a distance, curiosity pulling you into the dim forest that borders the village. The trees loom tall overhead, their branches skeletal in the cold air. The children move with a surprising confidence, chatting softly in their lilting accents as they scour the ground for anything useful. One girl crouches to pluck mushrooms, carefully examining their caps before adding them to her basket. She looks no older than 10, but her precision is that of an expert. You can't help but imagine a modern child scrolling TikTok while this girl carefully selects plants that will season her family's supper. A sudden crack startles you, a branch snapping underfoot. One of the boys whirls around, raising his stick defensively. His serious expression softens when he recognizes you, and he flashes a grin before turning back to his work. You realize that even at this age, these children are aware of their surroundings in a way most adults today aren't. Survival is a constant part of their lives. As the morning wears on, you make your way back toward the village square. There's a rhythm to this place, a balance between danger and resilience. Children run barefoot across uneven cobblestones, weaving between chickens and pigs that wander freely. Mothers work over steaming pots, some with babies tied tightly to their backs in worn slings. One woman kneads bread with one hand while bouncing a fussing toddler with the other, her movements calm and efficient. No one here talks about finding balance between parenting and life. Parenting is life, woven into every task, every breath. You stop near a blacksmith's workshop, where sparks fly from the open forge. A man hammers metal on an anvil, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cold. Beside him, his son, maybe 8 or 9, stands with tongs in hand, watching intently. The boy looks small next to the glowing furnace, but his expression is all focus and pride. The blacksmith pauses to give him instructions, then steps back. Without hesitation, the boy steps forward and grips the tongs tighter, moving a red-hot piece of metal to the anvil. You swallow hard, half expecting disaster, but the boy handles it with practiced ease. His father nods approvingly. Not a word of praise, just a subtle acknowledgement. You can't help but imagine the reaction if a modern parent allowed their child anywhere near molten iron. There'd be outrage, safety lectures, maybe even a visit from Child Protective Services. Here, though, this is simply how skills are passed down. These children aren't coddled, they're forged, like the tools their parents craft. By midday, the square is alive with activity. Children carry heavy baskets of vegetables, herd goats, and run errands for their parents. They're trusted to handle responsibility, because there's no other choice. Childhood here isn't an age of innocence. It's an apprenticeship for survival. And strangely, you find yourself admiring these small, capable humans who live without the luxuries of helmets, safety rails, or constant supervision. A soft breeze carries the smell of roasting meat, and your stomach growls. Families begin gathering around their homes, preparing the midday meal. You notice a boy, no older than 4, sitting by the doorway of his cottage with a small wooden knife. He's clumsily carving a stick, his tiny hands steady despite the blade's sharpness. His parents don't hover over him. They're nearby, yes, but they trust him to learn through trial and error. You pause and lean against a fence post, letting the scene wash over you. There's a rugged beauty in this parenting style, even if it would horrify most modern authorities. Here, childhood isn't protected from reality, it's shaped by it. And as the day stretches on, you realize you're witnessing something rare. A world where responsibility begins the moment a child can walk, and safety is a privilege, not a guarantee. The smell of bread baking draws you down a narrow dirt path, lined with timber-framed cottages. You pass mothers with infants strapped to their chests, some working over large steaming cauldrons while toddlers cling to their skirts. Others are gutting fish, churning butter, or tending gardens, all while their children toddle dangerously close to open fires or splash near shallow wells. No one panics, no one swoops in to scoop them up. This is normal. Survival has taught these parents to trust that their children will learn through scraped knees and close calls. You can't help but picture a modern parent watching this scene, their face going pale at the sheer number of safety hazards around every corner. Further along the lane, You see a group of older children, their faces smudged with soot, carrying buckets of water from the well. Each bucket is nearly half their weight, yet they trudge along silently, stopping only to catch their breath before continuing. A woman nearby, kneeling as she scrubs clothes in a wooden tub, doesn't look up or rush to help. In this world, strength isn't built in gyms or sports practices. It's earned every day, hauling and carrying, lifting and learning. One boy catches your attention. He's about 9 years old and walking carefully with a heavy iron pot balanced precariously on his shoulder. Steam curls out from the pot, scalding his bare arms as he navigates the uneven path. He flinches, but doesn't complain. When he reaches his cottage, he sets it down with a grunt and looks proud of himself, a rare smile flashing across his face. His mother doesn't shower him with praise. She gives him a curt nod before handing him a broom. The next task awaits. Imagine, you murmur to yourself, calling child services because a fourth grader carried boiling soup. The thought is so absurd, it makes you chuckle. As you continue, the air is filled with a strange mixture of scents. Smoke from hearth fires, damp hay, manure, and the occasional sweet waft of herbs hung to dry on cottage walls. A tiny girl sits cross-legged on the ground, peeling root vegetables with a small sharp blade. Her fingers work quickly, and she hums a soft tune as she tosses the peels into a clay pot. A few feet away, her older brother splits firewood with a small hatchet. The steady thwack of the blade echoes through the village, a rhythm of necessity. Neither child seems afraid of their tools. These are simply extensions of their daily life. You reach the outskirts of the village and find a small open field where a group of boys wrestle and tumble in the grass. It almost looks like play, but their movements are sharp, calculated, and serious. One of them holds a wooden staff, practicing swings under the watchful eye of an older man. Training for battle begins young here. By 12, many boys are expected to handle a real weapon. Their lives might depend on it one day. The older man claps a boy on the shoulder, his grizzled face breaking into a proud grin. No trophies, no participation ribbons, just acknowledgement that the boy is learning the skills of survival. You turn back toward the village center, and as you pass each cottage, the rhythm of parenting in this time becomes clearer. There's no concept of helicopter parenting or overprotection. Children are woven into every task and danger. A toddler may learn balance while toddling near a steep ditch. A 10-year-old learns responsibility with a sharp blade. And a teenager learns adulthood long before their first birthday candles would even be blown out in a modern home. Standing there, you realize how deeply this era contrasts with the world you know. Here, safety is a luxury, and childhood innocence doesn't mean sheltering it, means being part of a world that is both brutal and beautiful. You follow the faint sound of bells to a small wooden church at the edge of the village. Inside, a handful of families kneel on straw-covered floors, their children squirming and whispering in hushed tones. A priest at the front drones on in Latin, his voice echoing off the stone walls. None of the children understand a word he's saying, but that doesn't matter. Parents occasionally swat their kids lightly to keep them still, a quick flick of the wrist that would earn gasps in a modern church. Here, discipline is a public performance. Children are expected to sit in silence. And shame is a stronger motivator than comfort. Outside, the bell tolls again, and you're met with the sight of a young boy about 7 years old, standing barefoot in the cold mud. His shirt is little more than a tattered rag, and he's shivering, his lips pale. A woman beside him, likely his mother, is also barefoot, holding a basket of onions. You realize quickly that this isn't punishment, this is poverty. Shoes are expensive, and children often go without until they're worth the investment, meaning until they're old enough to work harder. You look down at your own shoes and can't help but think of how quickly someone today would rush to donate boots or coats to a child like him. The smell of boiled cabbage drifts from a nearby window as a mother calls her children inside for their midday meal. You peek through the doorway and see a large pot of stew, watery but steaming, with chunks of bread floating on the surface. The family gathers on the floor to eat, and everyone digs in with their bare hands. The youngest child gnaws on a piece of bread before passing it back to her mother to finish. No one bats an eye at the sharing of saliva-covered food. This is simply how meals work. Imagine a modern parenting blog commenting on safe food practices. This would send the entire comment section into meltdown. After the meal, the older children scatter back to their chores, while the youngest curls up on a straw mattress in the corner. There's no soft crib, no nursery decorated in pastel colors, no lullabies playing from a Bluetooth speaker. The child drifts off to sleep surrounded by the noise of clanging pots and barking dogs. You notice the mattress isn't even fully stuffed, the straw sticking out at odd angles. Yet here, it's considered good enough, better than a dirt floor. A commotion draws your attention back outside, where a small crowd gathers near the well. A boy has fallen in, and two men are frantically pulling him up by his arms. His mother stands to the side, hands pressed over her mouth, while the villagers work together to rescue him. The boy emerges coughing and sputtering, and after a quick check to make sure he's breathing, his father smacks him lightly on the back of the head and tells him to be more careful. No emergency services, no therapy, no processing the trauma. The lesson is simple. Don't fall in the well next time. As the villagers disperse, you walk further down a path lined with tall hedgerows. The sun is beginning to set, and the golden light bathes the scene in a warm glow. You spot two sisters carrying firewood, their arms trembling under the weight. They're no older than 10 and 12, and their dresses are torn at the hems. Still, their faces are serious, determined, as if they understand that dinner won't be cooked if they don't bring this wood back home. You step aside as they pass, marveling at the quiet maturity etched into their young faces. Here, childhood isn't a stage of life. It's a brief interlude before adulthood. A child may laugh and play, but those moments are woven between tasks and expectations. There's no concept of letting kids be kids because there's no time for it. Childhood itself feels like a luxury, and you realize just how fragile that luxury is. As night settles over the village, lanterns flicker to life in the windows. Families gather around their hearths, their children already drifting to sleep, exhausted from the day's work. The world is quieter now, but the danger hasn't gone away. You can almost feel the weight of parental worry hanging over every household, not about screen time or sugar intake, but about survival, illness, and the harshness of winter. You wake the next morning to the faint crow of a rooster and the clanging of a pot outside your window. The air is cold enough to sting your cheeks, and a thin mist clings to the village, swirling around the thatched rooftops like smoke. You step outside to find a mother hunched over a wooden wash basin, scrubbing clothes in icy water. Her hands are red and cracked, and her young son stands beside her, shivering while holding a smaller basin filled with soap. He looks no older than 5, yet he's already learning how to wash clothes properly. His tiny hands raw from the cold. You're reminded that, in this world, chores aren't a suggestion, they're survival training. Nearby, a group of children chases a stray dog through the muddy road. Their laughter cuts through the stillness, but as soon as they're spotted by an older man with a stick, they scatter. The man yells something about wasting time, his voice rough, but the kids don't seem afraid. They're used to this. Here, discipline isn't just verbal, it's physical and immediate. The threat of a swift swat or a cuff on the ear is enough to keep kids in line, and no one questions it. Imagine someone today seeing that on a playground child services would be called before you could blink. But here, it's part of life. A language of authority that children instinctively understand. You make your way to the village square, where a woman is tending to a crying baby, swaddled tightly in a rough wool blanket. The baby is fussing, but the woman doesn't coo or sing to soothe her. She simply shifts her on her hip while continuing to haggle over the price of eggs. You notice the swaddling is so tight, the baby can't move her arms. That's not neglect. It's believed to protect the child from growing crooked. The logic is medieval, but the intent is love. In a way, parents here are constantly battling invisible threats, demons, disease, the fear of a child's spirit slipping away, if not carefully guarded. Parenting is equal parts superstition and survival manual. Across the square, A man shoos his son toward a blacksmith shop. The boy carries a small hammer, his face streaked with soot. He looks about 8. This isn't a casual help dad at work day, this is his apprenticeship. By this age, many children are expected to start learning their trade, setting the course of their future before they've even lost all their baby teeth. You can practically see his childhood shrinking with each swing of that hammer, traded for skill, responsibility, and the hope of one day becoming valuable enough to provide for a family of his own. Walking further, you find yourself at a farm where a mother balances a toddler on her hip while stirring a massive pot over a fire. Her other children, all under 10, run around carrying buckets of water, bundles of straw, and even live chickens. One little girl stops to pull a thorn from her bare foot, wipes her eyes with her dirty hand, and keeps moving. There's no time for fussing. Every hand, no matter how small, is essential. The weight of adulthood doesn't creep up slowly here. It arrives like a sudden storm, and no one has the luxury to complain. As the day wears on, you notice something peculiar. Even with the harshness, there's a strange closeness among families. Children aren't tucked away in separate bedrooms or dropped off at daycare. They're woven into every part of life. They see everything: birth, sickness, hunger, even death, because there's no way to shield them from reality. Parenting isn't about creating a safe bubble. It's about teaching kids how to survive the storms that are guaranteed to come. You pass by a small cottage where a grandmother rocks back and forth in a chair, a toddler at her feet. She hums softly, her voice shaky but soothing. Even in this world of relentless work, there are flashes of tenderness. A father ruffles his son's hair after a hard day's labor. A mother smiles as she hands her daughter a slice of bread, saving the largest piece for her. Love exists here, fierce and unspoken, though its methods would raise every modern eyebrow in sight. The evening settles in again, and you realize this cycle never really breaks. Parents here don't have the luxury to overthink. There's no debate about gentle parenting or screen-free playtime, it's all instinct and grit. A good parent is one who keeps their child alive long enough to grow strong, and sometimes that means raising them in ways that would look like cruelty today. You wake to the distant toll of a church bell, its deep chime rolling through the damp morning air like a summons. The village is already alive, smoke curling from chimneys, chickens scattering in the mud. You notice a boy, no older than 10, carrying a wooden bucket nearly as big as he is. His arms tremble, and his face is flushed with effort, but no one steps in to help. Here, hardship isn't an exception, it's the lesson itself. Parents believe that making children strong means letting them struggle, even if it feels heartless. A few steps further, you see a mother kneeling by a tiny cradle, rocking it with her foot while mending clothes with her hands. The baby inside isn't dressed in soft, colorful outfits like modern infants. Instead, she's swaddled tightly in rough wool, her arms and legs stiff like a wrapped log. You remember hearing that swaddling like this was thought to prevent deformities and even evil spirits from twisting a child's limbs. The baby cries, but the mother doesn't rush to comfort her. Crying is seen as exercise for the lungs. Imagine explaining that to a modern parent, they'd be horrified, but here, it's just common sense. Outside, a group of children chases a goose down the muddy road, laughing and shrieking. Their bare feet slap against the wet earth, and they don't seem bothered by the cold drizzle. But nearby, a stern father is sharpening a stick, and when one child stumbles into his work, he doesn't scold with words, he gives a sharp swat to the boy's leg and sends him running. You can feel your shoulders tense at the sound. Discipline is not a conversation here. It's swift, physical, and unquestioned. In this world, love often looks like toughness. At the edge of the village, you find a family working in a field. The father tills with a wooden plough while his older children scatter seed. The youngest, a girl who can't be more than 4, is dragging a small basket of rocks out of the soil. Her face is smeared with dirt, her nose running in the cold. But she's focused, mimicking her siblings with determination. Her mother stands nearby, hands on hips, nodding with pride. No one here believes in waiting for the right age to start learning responsibility. Childhood is brief, and every year matters. The air smells of damp hay and smoke as you walk on. You pass a cottage where a mother has laid her infant in a wooden cradle near the fire. But you notice something odd. The cradle is tied with rope, so the baby can't roll over. It's another safety measure. In a way, a medieval solution to prevent accidents in a world without baby monitors or padded cribs. But it feels unsettling, this stark, practical approach to childcare. Parents here love fiercely, but they don't soften the world for their children because the world itself won't soften. At the village square, a boy with a shaved head runs errands for a merchant. He's small, scrawny, and clearly hungry, but he bows deeply every time he hands over a package. Apprenticeships like his often begin when children are barely out of toddlerhood, a chance to learn a trade that might one day keep them alive. You imagine explaining to a modern parent that their 6-year-old needs to leave home and work under a stranger's roof. It would spark outrage. Here, though, it's an honor. Night creeps in, and the chill bites harder. You pass a family huddled together near a hearth, their faces glowing in the firelight. The father carves wooden toys while the children whisper stories to one another, their laughter soft and sleepy. The scene is strangely heartwarming, a glimpse of tenderness that transcends centuries. Even in a world so harsh, parents find ways to love their children. It just looks different, quieter, rougher, but no less real. You wake to the clang of iron pots and the smell of boiling porridge, thick with barley. The cottage is dim, smoky from the fire, and already buzzing with activity. A boy stirs the pot with a wooden spoon while a toddler toddles dangerously close to the hearth, his small hands reaching for the flames. No one rushes to scoop him up. Instead, his older sister swats him away with the back of her hand, and the adults barely glance over. In this world, danger isn't cushioned, it's part of growing up. Children learn fast, or they don't. Outside, the village hums with the rhythm of another day. You spot a father fitting his son with a small belt knife. The boy's eyes wide with pride as he carefully sheathes it. He can't be more than 8, but already he's expected to defend himself and help in the fields. Imagine handing a modern child a blade and sending them out to work in waist-high grass filled with snakes and thorns. Here, though, it's a rite of passage, a sign that the boy is no longer a baby, but a worker, a contributor. You wander toward the market, where a mother scolds her daughter, not with words, but with a sharp tug on her ear. The girl winces, her cheeks flushed, but she nods respectfully, carrying a basket twice her size filled with vegetables. There's no room for backtalk or sulking here. Obedience isn't optional, it's survival. You notice the mother's own hands, raw and cracked from labor, and realize her sternness isn't cruelty. It's exhaustion, fear, and love, all wound tightly together. At a nearby well, a group of children gathers water in wooden buckets. Their laughter rings out as they splash each other, but when an elder man walks past, they fall silent, lowering their heads. Respect is ingrained deeply here, enforced not just by parents, but by the entire community. Everyone plays a role in raising children, and discipline is shared. Imagine living in a world where your neighbor has full permission to smack your child for misbehaving. It's almost unthinkable now. Further along, you see a newborn bundled in rough cloth, his tiny head wrapped tightly to shape his skull into a perfect roundness, a practice believed to ensure health and beauty. The baby is quiet, unnervingly so, because his cradle is suspended from a beam, gently swaying like a hammock. It's a clever setup, but you shiver at how different it feels from the plush nurseries you're used to. Here, everything is functional, nothing is for luxury. Even love feels efficient. The day fades, and the air smells of rain-soaked earth. Families gather near hearths, eating bowls of pottage and crusty bread, children leaning against their parents' knees. You catch a glimpse of one father braiding his daughter's hair, his fingers clumsy but tender. The same man who would not hesitate to cuff her for disrespect now hums softly as he tucks a stray strand behind her ear. In this world, affection and severity coexist in every breath. As darkness thickens, you hear wolves howling in the distance, their cries carrying over the thatched rooftops. Parents pull their children closer, wrapping them in blankets, their voices low, and serious. You feel the weight of their love, a fierce, protective force that doesn't look like the warm, soft care of today. It's sharper, like the edge of a blade, because danger is always near. This isn't parenting for happiness, it's parenting for survival. The night settles heavy over the village, and you step outside to find a sky stitched with stars, brighter than you've ever seen. The world is quieter now, but even in this calm, danger hums beneath the surface. You spot a mother carrying her infant in a sling as she kneels to stoke the fire outside her cottage. The baby doesn't cry, though the smoke makes your own eyes water. In this time, there are no air purifiers or soft bassinets. Children grow up breathing in ash and soot, their tiny lungs toughened from birth. You walk past the barns, where older children, barely teenagers, are bedding down with livestock. They curl up on scratchy straw, pressed close to goats and cows, using the animals' warmth to keep from freezing in the drafty building. Imagine telling your child today that their bed would be a dirt floor shared with sheep. Back then, this wasn't strange, it was practical. These animals are wealth, and keeping them safe is a child's responsibility. Further along, a small hut glows dimly, its doorway covered with rough linen. You peek inside to see a family huddled together, a baby swaddled so tightly it can't move its limbs. They believe it keeps the child safe, prevents deformity, and makes them grow straight and strong. But you feel a twinge of unease at how still the infant seems, its cries muffled by layers of fabric. You realize love here is often expressed through methods that feel harsh by today's standards. It's not neglect, it's survival wrapped in superstition. Outside, you hear the creak of wood as a father sharpens a switch, not out of cruelty, but preparation. Discipline is swift and physical here, and no parent is ashamed of it. A misstep in this world can mean hunger or injury, and so punishment is immediate, designed to teach quickly. The air feels thick with that reality. One wrong move could have real consequences, and parents are always aware of it. You glance back toward the cottages and see mothers pouring water into wooden bowls, their children washing before bed. The water is cold, drawn straight from a well, and the children wince but don't complain. Complaints aren't tolerated, and comfort isn't guaranteed. Instead, there's a quiet resilience in their eyes, an understanding that life is hard, but that's simply the way it is. As you return to the village square, you notice a group of parents whispering near the fire, their voices low and serious. There's talk of illness spreading in a nearby hamlet, and you see fear ripple through them like a shadow. Their faces are weathered, their hands scarred, but their love for their children is unshakable, fierce as steel. In their eyes, parenting isn't about nurturing dreams. It's about keeping those children alive through the night. The fire crackles, casting long shadows that dance against the walls of the cottages. You feel the weight of the past pressing down, a reminder that every laugh, every warm touch from a parent came at a cost. Here, love is a fight, not a feeling, and the scars it leaves are both literal and unseen. You wander toward the edge of the village, where the moonlight glints off the thatched roofs, and a bitter wind snakes through the trees. A distant howl sends a shiver down your spine, and you realize wolves lurk just beyond the fields. That's why children are rarely left alone. Even toddlers are expected to stay close, always within earshot of their parents. You spot a father tying a bell around his daughter's waist, a crude little charm meant to alert him if she wanders too far. It's a small thing, but in this world, it might save her life. Nearby, a group of children carries water buckets so large they nearly topple forward. Their faces are flushed with effort, but no one steps in to help. Here, children are workers as soon as they can walk steadily. There are no weekend cartoons, no soccer practice, just chores that begin before sunrise and stretch past sunset. You can almost hear your modern mind rebelling. This is child labor, but here it's survival. If a child doesn't work, someone might go hungry. You pass by another cottage, where a mother rocks her baby by the fire, whispering a lullaby in a low, haunting tune. Her arms are strong from kneading bread and hauling water, but her voice is soft, filled with an ancient tenderness. Yet even as she hums, She places the baby in a wooden cradle with sides so high and rigid it looks like a tiny coffin. It's built that way to keep animals away, and maybe even spirits too, if you believe the old stories. Stepping farther into the shadows, you catch sight of a boy no older than 7, crouched near the forest edge. He's holding a stick and keeping watch over a row of snares, waiting to catch rabbits for dinner. His small hands grip the wood tightly, his face tense with focus. No adult supervises him, yet no one doubts his ability. Childhood here is short, vanishing like mist at dawn. By his age, he already understands hunger and danger better than most adults in your world today. As you watch him, you feel an ache in your chest. This parenting style may seem harsh, cruel even, but every choice stems from necessity. There are no safety nets, no hospitals around the corner, no endless aisles of baby food and warm blankets. Parents teach their children toughness because softness could get them killed. And though it shocks your modern sensibilities, you begin to see that their love burns just as brightly, if not more fiercely, than any parent's love today. The boy straightens, holding up a snare with a trembling rabbit caught inside. He beams with pride as he runs back toward the village, the thrill of providing for his family lighting up his face. In that moment, you understand. This is not a childhood without love, but one where love means equipping your children to stand on their own in a brutal, unforgiving world. You follow the boy back to the village, his bare feet slapping softly against the dirt path. The smell of smoke and roasted barley fills the cool evening air, and families begin gathering near the fire pits. A mother scolds her daughter for dropping a bucket of water, but instead of comforting her with a hug, she hands the girl another bucket and points toward the well. There's no coddling here. Mistakes are lessons, and tears don't excuse you from your chores. You can't help but imagine how that would go over in a modern parenting book. Chapter 1. Let them cry it out while they haul wood. Nearby, a group of toddlers toddles, if you can even call it that, through the mud, their faces smeared with soot and dirt. One chews absently on a piece of dried bread, while another carries a dull wooden spoon like it's a prized treasure. Parents glance over now and then, but no one hovers like a helicopter parent. Children learn independence, not at 18, but at 18 months. The village has a rhythm, an unspoken understanding. Everyone, no matter how small, has a place and a role to play. You notice a father teaching his son how to sharpen a blade by lantern light. The boy can't be older than 8, but his fingers work carefully, sliding the steel along the whetstone. His father doesn't guide his hand, doesn't step in to prevent a mistake. Instead, he watches, offering only the occasional nod or grunt. If the boy cuts himself, it's just part of the learning. You can almost hear your modern instincts yelling to intervene, to snatch the blade away. But here, that blade is a tool for survival, and the sooner the boy learns, the better. A mother nearby hums as she kneads dough, her sleeves rolled up, her hands moving in steady rhythm. She keeps one eye on the pot boiling over the fire and the other on her 3-year-old, who toddles toward a chicken with surprising determination. Instead of swooping in, she lets the child chase it, knowing he'll fall into the mud, but also knowing that each fall teaches him more than she ever could with words. Parenting here is a quiet dance of trust and resilience. The moon climbs higher, casting silver light across the village. Families settle in for supper, eating together on wooden benches. The food is simple pottage, bread, maybe a bit of meat if the hunt was good, but it tastes richer for its scarcity. Children slurp and laugh, and for a moment, you see the tenderness woven into this harsh lifestyle. Parents may not shower their kids with praise or gifts, but every bite of food, every hand-me-down garment, every wooden toy carved by candlelight is proof of love expressed through action. As the night deepens, a sense of closeness settles over the village. You notice how parenting here isn't about comfort, it's about preparation. Children are raised not to feel safe, but to be safe, to grow sharp and self-reliant in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. And while this would shock modern society, it's also strangely beautiful, a world where strength and love are inseparable, where even the smallest child carries themselves with a quiet, hard-earned dignity. You wake the next morning to the sound of roosters crowing, their sharp cries echoing through the misty dawn. The chill bites at your nose, and you pull your thin wool blanket tighter as you sit up in the dim light of the cottage. Across the room, a mother is already awake, kneeling by the hearth as she stirs the embers back to life. Her baby lies bundled nearby, not in a soft crib, but in a rough wooden box, stuffed with straw, its tiny fists flailing in the cold air. There's no time for morning cuddles. The baby is fed quickly and set aside as the day's labor begins. You step outside, where the village is already bustling. Children, still rubbing sleep from their eyes, are sent on errands, some to fetch water, others to gather kindling. There's no such thing as too young to help. A boy no older than 5 carries a bucket so large it sways and splashes water down his legs, but he trudges along without complaint. His mother follows at a distance, but only to make sure he doesn't drop it entirely. She won't carry it for him. In this world, hardship is the lesson plan, and life itself is the teacher. The blacksmith's hammer rings out in the distance, and a small boy stands at his side, wide-eyed as he watches the sparks fly. The smith hands him a small piece of iron to hold steady on the anvil, and though the child's arms tremble, he doesn't flinch. One mistake here could mean a burn or worse, yet no one hovers protectively. The boy is learning courage not from words, but from feeling the heat of the forge lick at his skin, while his father trusts him to hold steady. You walk further, past a group of girls sitting outside their home, threading wool with practiced fingers. One girl hums a soft tune, while another rocks a crying baby in her lap. She can't be more than 8 years old, but her hands move with the calm assurance of someone twice her age. Childhood, as you know it, a time of toys, naps, and playdates, doesn't exist here. Childhood is an apprenticeship for life, and the training starts early. Even playtime carries a hint of danger. 2 boys run past you, wooden swords in hand, swinging at each other with wild abandon. One takes a blow to the head and tumbles into the dirt, crying briefly before scrambling to his feet and charging back into the fight. No one scolds them, no one rushes over. Their fathers, sitting nearby, watch with faint smiles, proud of the boy's spirit. Bruises are badges of honor here. You pause to take in the scene, realizing that what feels shocking to you is simply normal for them. Parents here don't soften the world for their children, they prepare their children for the world. The harshness you see isn't cruelty, it's survival. And in a time when sickness and famine can strike without warning, there's no luxury for overprotection. Love is expressed through trust, through teaching, through pushing children to become capable far sooner than you'd think possible. You follow a narrow path to a field where a farmer's children are already hard at work. A boy of maybe 6 struggles to push a wooden plough alongside a donkey, his little arms straining as his bare feet slip in the mud. His father doesn't scold him, but instead urges him on with calm encouragement, pointing out the straight lines he should follow. Behind them, a girl no older than 10 scatters seeds with a precise flick of her wrist, every movement drilled into her by seasons of repetition. This is their classroom. Dirt under their fingernails, blisters on their palms, and a keen awareness that their work today feeds their family tomorrow. Nearby, a mother kneels in the dirt, teaching her toddler to recognize different herbs. The child clutches a sprig of something green and fragrant, repeating the name softly as the mother nods in approval. You watch her hands, rough and calloused, gently guiding the small fingers to crush the leaves and sniff their scent. It's a tender moment, but also a lesson in survival. Knowing which plants can heal and which can kill is as essential as learning to speak. A group of older boys gather at the edge of the field, wooden bows in hand, practicing their aim on a straw target. They are barely teenagers, but their focus is sharp, their movements deliberate. There's no soccer practice or after-school activities here. This is their extracurricular. One boy releases an arrow that thuds into the target's center, and the others cheer softly. His father, standing nearby with a real bow slung over his shoulder, gives a nod of approval. In this world, Skill with a weapon isn't a hobby, it's a lifeline. You glance back toward the village and see another striking contrast. A cluster of younger children play near the cottages, laughing as they chase one another with sticks, their joy loud and infectious. It's easy to think, for a moment, that they're carefree, like kids today. But you notice the oldest in the group, no more than 9, keeping a careful eye on a baby strapped to her back. Even in play, responsibility weighs on her small shoulders. Childhood here is never truly separate from adulthood. It's just a smaller version of it. The air is thick with the smell of earth and wood smoke, and the sight of these children working so seamlessly alongside their parents leaves you with a strange mix of admiration and unease. These kids aren't sheltered, but they are strong. Every scraped knee, every splinter, every chore is a thread in the tapestry of their survival. It's a life that would shock most parents today. Yet here, it's an act of love. Raising children not just to live, but to endure. You wander further along a dusty path and find yourself on the outskirts of the village, where a blacksmith's forge roars like a dragon. Sparks leap and dance in the dim glow, and there, in the thick heat and clang of iron, a boy of about 8 hammers a glowing horseshoe with all his strength. His arms are thin but steady, and his face is streaked with soot. His father, towering and broad-shouldered, stands behind him, correcting his grip on the hammer. Again, the man says simply, and the boy nods. There's no question, no hesitation, only the rhythm of work echoing through the night air. You feel your modern instincts itch to step in, to tell the boy to wear gloves, goggles, something. Yet here, the danger is part of the education. Mistakes are not just lessons, they could be scars carried for life. Still, there's a quiet pride in the boy's expression, a glow of confidence that comes from being trusted with responsibility far beyond his years. You realize that, in this world, childhood is a short, fragile window. Adulthood doesn't wait for birthdays. It arrives the moment a child can hold a tool. Nearby, a young apprentice bellows the flames, his face set with grim focus as he learns to temper steel. He can't be older than 11, but his every movement is careful, measured. It strikes you that no one here is too young for anything. They're simply small adults in training. Stepping outside the forge's heavy air, you catch sight of a girl leading a goat down a narrow trail toward a patch of grazing land. She can't be more than 7, yet she guides the animal with practiced confidence, a wooden staff in her hand like a shepherd's crook. She glances at you with wary curiosity, her eyes reflecting wisdom far older than her years. Out here, there's no concept of babysitting. Children like her spend hours alone tending animals, their safety resting entirely on their instincts and courage. Imagine your average suburban parent, tracking their child's every step through a phone app, suddenly dropped into this world. They'd have heart palpitations, watching their second grader fend off wolves, or climb a rickety ladder to patch a leaky thatched roof. Yet, for this little girl, danger is as normal as breathing. Her confidence, her independence, is forged in the absence of constant supervision. As the sun dips lower, the scene around you is a symphony of survival training disguised as daily life. No age is spared from learning. Children here grow up as if time itself is sprinting ahead, daring them to keep pace. And while this kind of upbringing might land parents in a courtroom today, here it's an act of devotion. Every task is a lesson, every risk a rite of passage. You follow the girl and her goat further down the trail, until the smell of smoke and roasted meat draws your attention to a cottage tucked behind a row of apple trees. The door creaks open, and a woman steps out, her arms full of rough wool. A toddler, no older than 2, toddles barefoot behind her, gnawing on a piece of stale bread that looks like it could double as a brick. The woman doesn't notice him wobbling dangerously close to the wooden steps, too focused on balancing the pile of fabric on her hip. You can't help but tense, ready to reach out. But here, no one rushes to swoop up a child every time they stumble. The toddler trips, lets out a startled cry, and then astonishingly picks himself back up, without so much as a comforting word. The mother glances back once, nods approvingly, and goes about her work. You realize that this hands-off style of parenting isn't neglect, it's expectation. Children are trusted to figure things out on their own because they have to. The world is unforgiving, and coddling won't prepare them for it. Inside the cottage, you spot an older boy, maybe 10, standing on a stool stirring a massive pot over the fire. The heat makes the room feel like a furnace, but no one seems worried about him being so close to open flames. There's no concept of childproofing, no cabinet locks or baby gates. The entire house is a hazard by modern standards, sharp knives scattered across the table, heavy pots dangling precariously, a roaring hearth inches away from the boy's bare legs. Yet he stirs the stew confidently, humming a tune under his breath. The mother moves swiftly around the kitchen, her hands never still. She calls to the boy to taste the stew, and he obediently dips in a wooden spoon, blows gently, and gives his verdict. You're struck by how much responsibility rests on his small shoulders. He's not helping with dinner, he's in charge of it. In this home, even children are essential gears in the machine of survival. Stepping back outside, the sky has shifted to dusky violet, stars beginning to peek through. The girl with the goat has settled on a rock, humming softly while she braids a length of rope. She doesn't look lonely, she looks capable. That's the theme of every child you've seen here tonight. Not shielded from danger, but molded by it. They're not seen as fragile treasures to be protected. They're future workers, future farmers, future parents themselves. Imagine plucking a modern family from their suburban home, with its child locks and padded corners, and setting them here for a week. How long before they'd call for reinforcements? Before they'd crumble at the sight of a 3-year-old carrying water buckets? The gulf between then and now is staggering. You step back onto the road, the evening breeze carrying the scent of wood smoke and livestock, and you realize this isn't just a different time, it's a different definition of childhood altogether. You continue down the dirt path, your boots crunching softly against loose gravel as the village fades into shadow. Lanterns flicker in cottage windows, casting warm squares of light onto the ground, and the distant chatter of families winding down for the night fills the air. You pause outside a small farmhouse where a woman rocks a baby in her arms, humming a tune so old it feels stitched into the fabric of this world. The baby isn't wrapped in plush blankets or swaddled in pastel softness. Instead, she's bundled in a scratchy wool cloth that smells faintly of smoke and earth. Her tiny face peeks out, eyes wide, already alert, as though even infants here know there's no room for weakness. Across the yard, a young boy sharpens a stick with a knife that looks longer than his arm. His father gives him a nod of approval, but no warning, no lecture about being careful. Here danger is part of life, and children learn by doing. You realize that medieval parenting wasn't about comfort, it was about survival. Love existed. Of course, parents loved their children fiercely, but they showed that love by preparing them to endure, not by protecting them from every bump and bruise. You watch as the family disappears inside for the night. The cottage door shuts, but the sound of laughter seeps through the cracks. It's faint but undeniable a reminder that even in a world so harsh by our standards, there was joy too. There was connection. Parents taught their children not only how to survive, but also how to belong to something greater than themselves. A family, a village, a way of life. The moon rises high, silvering the rooftops and fields, and you begin your walk back through the village one last time. The air smells of hay and smoke, and every corner hums with the rhythm of a world where childhood was short but formative. As you pass the well, you pause to look back at the quiet homes, the dark fields, the sky pricked with stars. It's a scene frozen in time, beautiful in its simplicity, but brutal in its expectations. You step out of the village, back onto the empty road, and take a breath. The medieval parenting style you've witnessed tonight wouldn't just raise eyebrows in today's world. It would spark outrage, legal action, and headlines. But as much as it shocks you, you can't help but admire the resilience it produced. Children here grew up fast, yes, but they also grew strong, self-reliant, and deeply tied to their families. As the sound of crickets fills your ears and the moon lights your way, the weight of centuries settles gently on your shoulders. Tonight, you've walked through a different definition of love, one forged by necessity, and hardened by life's relentless pace. You turn a final glance over your shoulder at the village, and with that, you step back into the present, back to a world where childhood is long, soft, and sheltered, and where parents are judged not for their children's survival skills, but for their emotional well-being. And as you settle back into your own world, you can't help but whisper a quiet thank you to those long-ago parents who endured so much, all so their children could live to see another day.